question and a comment. I guess I'll make the comment first. Rick, I appreciate your question about Whiskey Island. For those of you who don't know, that area is in my ward, and was kind of pulled in this little tuggy match between the city, the county, and the port. And I have to tell you, for the first time, I feel there's such clarity that's coming out of the Port Authority, and it's really attributed to this man right here. It's really refreshing that somebody doesn't come in with an agenda and says, this is what I want to do. The first time I met with Adam, he said, I want to hear what your thoughts are on this issue, and more importantly, what your constituents are saying about it. So it was refreshing that we have somebody as capable and as intelligent as Adam, who was willing to just sit and listen and not tell. So I want to thank you for that, and those conversations are going very well. My question would be, could you explain how you generate your operating funds to do the financing and the other things you do and the day-to-day stuff? And I know that you operate on a levy, and it's potentially up for renewal. And certainly I'm out there going to be publicly supporting it, and hope my colleagues in this organization would as well. But my question to you is, if you could explain that, please.
Councilman, thank you. We're actually a small organization in terms of operating budget. We have a couple of $1 billion of projects we've financed over the last 10 years, and we carry a pretty significant portfolio, but we do that with a $10 million a year operating budget. So we have a staff of about 20 people, and the way we generate our revenue is this. A portion comes from maritime operations, so we own the docks, we charge people to use the docks. It's a business. The more we generate in terms of traffic, the more cash comes to the Port Authority, so we can do good things, hopefully. A portion of that revenue comes from our development finance. So when we issue these bonds that I was discussing, we sustain fees for that. It's self-sustaining. And then a third of our funding comes from maritime, a third comes from development finance, so that's the self-sustaining portion. And then a third of that has, over the last, I should know the number, I'd say about 12 or 15 years, come from a levy. So property owners in Cuyahoga County pay I think it's the smallest of the levies, comes to the Port Authority, and every 5 years, we're actually on the ballot in November for renewal. Did I get that right? Renewal, not replacement. And I made that decision and actually worked with the board so that we were one on this issue. There was some interest for us to increase the levy and have the taxpayers finance some of these new initiatives. And I think we just said no. Actually, let's keep the current levy. And in fact, every year it's worth a little bit less, technically, so that it's not an increase at all. It's actually, but we'd like to be self-sustaining. And I think the mark that I'd like to be judged on is whether we win private investment to Cleveland for the projects we're working on. And I don't think this is a matter of coming back to the taxpayer saying, let's create a lot of money in a big pool from you. I suspect your constituents feel they're overtaxed now. So if we have something good to offer and we use our powers wisely, and there's value in our community, I think private investors would come to us for projects. I was on the phone with a couple of investors that I was working with in Europe, and we were pitching to them, come work with us on projects. And I was talking to a very large bank in Spain. It's actually the largest bank in Europe. And we were talking about infrastructure investment, and there's a world of investment in basically publicly sponsored projects that I think we could latch on to if we're smart about it. But yes, we have a levy renewal in November, which we're always concerned about to make sure that passes.
Adam, question. You've touched upon the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You said that the Port Authority did finance the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Correct me if I'm wrong, did they say you were from Virginia? Or you were in Virginia for a while?
I lived in Virginia for 7 years.
Does Norfolk and the Waterside area ring a bell to you?
It
or
does.
How they built that up?
That's in Southern Virginia, but I was in Northern Virginia.
Okay, now, on that Waterside...
I feel like I'm being led. There's a witness being led.
You've touched everything around the port. where you're located, which is right
Right.
on Lake Erie,
Sure.
what would you do for the 9th Street area to enhance people to get involved and come down to that area and make that area thrive?
Sure. Well, I think this is in legend in Cleveland. Everyone that knows Cleveland and loves Cleveland has probably thought a lot about how to make Cleveland a more vibrant place. And Cleveland certainly was on the right track some years ago. I didn't live here, but that's all you read about was Cleveland and in sort of the redevelopment, urban development world. A couple of things. If we end up moving our port, we own a lot of land right on the lake. It's actually where the lake and the river come together. And if you look on the city's lakefront plan, it calls for a development of various sorts and so forth. We think that would be, if we do anything right downtown, some of the most valuable property between New York and Chicago. And it's, for me, and I will get myself in trouble sometimes when I say this in Cleveland, it's not a matter of can we get that guy over there in Cleveland to put up a building and feel good about it tomorrow. I think we want it done tomorrow. But I think we have the chance to say this is Cleveland's potential, this unique, magical waterfront opportunity. And I'd love to be part of peddling that around the world to some of the best and brightest investors. And, do we want to create some unique water features and marina spaces and floating restaurants? I mean, we can. I think we can. I visited the fellow that, I don't know his title, he's probably the executive director of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2 days ago. There's a issue of refinancing their debt, and so they want to expand and do some other good things. And we were simply talking, and just like every other newcomer, I said, what happens around you? And it's they love coming to the Science Center or the Hall of Fame, whoever they is, because many Clevelanders have already been there. And I think the problem with tourism attractions is once you go, you might not be going back very quickly because that's the nature of the beast. It's what's around it, which isn't much. My wife and I went downtown on Sunday. Well, the Browns were playing, and we were going to take one of the ships out, the tour boats, and it didn't run. They needed 60 people to run on the most spectacular late summer, early fall day, and it didn't run because only 9 people showed up because you couldn't get to it because the Browns were there or there wasn't enough interest. There was no place to sit down. There was no restaurant. There was nothing. That's not our responsibility, but I think we would like to, and in some conversations we've had with Matt Zone, with his counterpart, councilman in downtown, with the mayor, is as we decide that we're moving our port, I think Cleveland has an opportunity, there's a window of opportunity to redefine some of that development, because there's some great assets. The Science Center is a wonderful place. The Hall of Fame is wonderful. I visited the fellows that own, it's in your district, the NOCCA complex. Is that right? I said, why aren't there some more restaurants along the riverfront? I mean, my mother came here from Arizona, and she wanted to sit outside and enjoy the water. We keep talking about the waterfront. There's no place to go and enjoy it. And I had to take her to a place called Shooters. I was a little scared. But after a few drinks, she was okay. But I mean, she had a great time, but there's just not a lot of opportunity yet. We seem to have this innate desire to get closer to the water. We just don't do as much with it as we could, I guess.